My shift log calls it Packet 40-119, low priority, unverified origin, and that is the whole reason I even looked at it twice. Everything that crosses my board at Relay Depot 9 has already been sorted by machines smarter than me. A packet that machines cannot classify gets kicked down to a human, and I am the human it gets kicked down to. I run courier dispatch, not defense, not diplomacy. If a mining outpost needs a replacement valve seal and the automated catalog does not carry the part number, I am the one who finds an old cross-reference and sends a drone. It is not glamorous work. My father flew transports during the Cordage War and never once let me forget it. And here I am 40 years later, routing spare parts to strangers who do not know my name and never will. He would have called this a desk job. He would have been right. The depot itself is nothing to look at. 4 berths, 4 drones, a bank of consoles old enough that 2 of them still take a physical maintenance key, and a window that looks out on scrub prairie instead of stars, because whoever built this station 60 years ago decided a listening post did not need a view of what it was listening to. I keep the window anyway. Most nights it is the only thing in the building that changes. Packet 40-119 came in on a frequency Earth had not used for outbound traffic in over 60 years. A fallback address baked into an old mutual catalog accord we signed with 3 neighboring polities before most of those polities finished naming their own colonies. Back then it was meant as a courtesy. If your own network could not find you a supplier, ours would try. Nobody expected anyone to still be listening at our end. Nobody expected anyone to still be listening at theirs. The packet was a formal requisition, addressed to a registry code, not to a person, and not to Earth. Whoever sent it typed a 9-digit locator string and got 2 digits wrong. I know this because I pulled the original registry file to see what they thought they were sending to. The entry they meant to hit was flagged incomplete, a placeholder line, no current relay listed, left blank since a records purge nobody at their end had bothered to update. Somewhere in their system, a routing script saw a dead line and fell back to the oldest working address on file, rather than return an error. That address was ours. I have seen this kind of thing before, though never quite this clean. Most misroutes I catch are noise, a garbled hail, a beacon that meant nothing by the time it reached me, a signal so degraded there was no request left inside it to fill. This one was intact end to end. Whoever built that fallback script 60 years ago had built it to work, and it had simply sat there working, unused, waiting for the day a live address went dark, and an old one had to catch what fell. The requisition itself was plain and awful in the way real emergencies usually are. A colony called Ashworth Hollow, population listed at just under 9,000, had drawn its drinking water for 2 generations from an aquifer beneath a formerly stable salt flat. A seismic shift had cracked the flat's crust, and the aquifer was drinking the flat back. A slow saline intrusion, invisible until half the colony's children turned up with kidney failure inside the same season. Their own physicians had identified the compound they needed to flush the salt load and protect renal function. Their own supply chain could not manufacture it fast enough, so a records clerk or a council aide or whoever keeps a colony's paperwork moving at 3 in the morning filed an emergency requisition against the nearest listed supplier and mistyped it into the past. I did not scramble anything. We do not have anything here to scramble. Relay Depot 9 has 4 courier drones, a parts catalog, and me. What we do have, filed under an old joint research annex from the same accord, is a shared pharmacological archive neither side ever formally decommissioned. Compounds, dosing tables, synthesis notes, cross-checked against species baseline chemistry for every signatory who ever bothered to submit one. I ran Ashworth Hollow's stated physiology against that archive and found their compounds sitting 3 folders deep, untouched since before I was born, filed by a researcher on both our sides whose names I did not recognize and who almost certainly never met. I filed the match, packaged the full synthesis specification, along with 200 units of preformed dosage keyed to their listed population curve, and loaded it onto a single drone. I did not add an escort. I did not flag it for review above my own authorization, because nothing in the request asked for more than what it asked for, and a depot dispatcher who pads a medical shipment with things nobody requisitioned is a depot dispatcher who gets a formal note in his file. I flagged it low priority critical, which is a contradiction nobody has fixed in 30 years of paperwork, logged the drone's departure at 0340, and sent it. It took the drone 11 days at courier speed. I did not think about it again until the acknowledgement came back, because that is the job. You send it, and you move to the next packet. And there were 40-some packets behind it that week alone. None of them urgent. All of them somebody's problem. The acknowledgement, when it arrived, was not addressed to a depot or a registry code. It was addressed to me, by call sign, which almost never happens. Automated systems answer requisitions. People answer people, and I had not expected a person on the other end of this one, only a database confirming a delivery. It came from a council elder named Serena Vale, and it was short. She confirmed receipt of the dosage and the synthesis file. She confirmed her own physicians had already begun distribution. And then, in the flat, careful phrasing of someone dictating a message she has rehearsed twice in her head, before speaking it aloud, she told me she wanted the record to reflect that the requisition had not been meant for us. She said her registry listed our relay address as inactive, an artifact line, she called it, kept only because deleting old Accord entries requires a vote her council had never scheduled. She said when the routing script defaulted to it, she assumed, and her staff assumed, that the packet had simply failed and would return undelivered within the hour, the way dead addresses always do. She said she had drafted a second requisition to a live supplier 3 systems over, expecting a 2-week wait at best, when the acknowledgement came back from a working address instead. She did not ask why we had answered. I think she already understood that part. An old Accord, still technically in force, still technically binding 2 governments who had not spoken directly in 6 decades. What she could not settle in her own mind, and said so plainly, was why the inactive line in her own registry was not inactive at all. She had checked it herself, she wrote, before filing her second requisition to the live supplier 3 systems over. Checked it the way a careful administrator checks a fact she intends to state to her council. It listed no current relay. It listed no contact protocol. It listed nothing, and yet something on the other end of nothing had read her request, understood it, and answered it correctly inside a matter of days. I wrote back only once, because that is depot policy, and because I did not have much to add. I told her the archive line was not blank on our end. It had simply never been updated to say anyone was still reading it. I told her Ashworth Hollow's requisition had been correctly filled by the wrong government, and that the correct government was welcome to update its own registry however it saw fit, but that ours would keep the line open regardless, the same as we always had, whether or not anyone remembered we were on it. She sent one more message after that, 3 lines, no elaboration. She wrote that her council had voted, for the first time in 11 years, to formally review every artifact line in the registry, rather than leave them as they were. She wrote that a full accounting would take months, and that Ashworth Hollow's physicians reported the first children off dialysis within the week. And she wrote that when the vote was called, nobody on the council could explain why a request for 1 drone carrying medicine had unsettled them more than a request for a war fleet would have, as if they had all been braced, without saying so aloud, for something larger and louder than what a misroute is actually supposed to send. A fleet would have confirmed what they already believed about an old, half-forgotten neighbor, that it kept its ships ready and its promises loud. A single drone carrying exactly what was asked for, nothing more, confirmed something else, and she did not have a tidy word for what that was. Neither, for what it is worth, do I. I filed her messages under packet 40-119, closed, and moved to the next line on my board. A fuel cell shipment overdue to a mining crew 4 systems out. Nothing urgent, nothing that would end up in anyone's registry review. That is most of the job. You answer the line because it is open, not because anyone remembers why, and you let the ones on the other end work out on their own time what it means that you were still there.